Krisserin.
Hi, Kelton.
Where are you?
I am in Scottsdale, Arizona, Paradise Valley. I'm pretty sure I got 2 speeding tickets back to back this weekend.
Did you really? I'm Krisserin Canary. And I'm Kelton Wright. Follow our quest to publish our first novels. From first drafts to query letters, through inevitable rejection, and hopefully eventual success. From California to Colorado, this is Pen Pals.
I'm so stupid. Okay, I was driving down this little street, just, listening to music today and not even paying attention. I don't even know how fast I was going. Not fast. I was probably going like 35 to 45 miles per hour. And all of a sudden, flash. He's and I freaked out about it. And it was like next to school, but it was 6 p.m. And I was not paying attention. It was in the middle of a residential neighborhood, empty streets, long thoroughfare. And then I did it again the next day.
You're
Same
kidding.
exact spot.
Was it the same police officer?
It's a camera.
Oh, a camera. Yeah.
I'm so mad at myself about it. And I called my husband the second time I found it. And he's like, "You're an adult. I don't know what to say to you." Other than that, it's beautiful here. It feels like the desert town I grew up in if we had a lot of money. That's what it feels like. The architecture is really interesting. These big, long, sprawling houses, and the front yards are filled with all of these different types of cacti and Palo Verde trees and other trees that I was like, Kelton would be mad at me for not knowing the names of these trees. Other beautiful trees. And I went on a walk yesterday and was just looking at all the beautiful houses and the hills in the background. And it's really nice here. I can see why people would want to move to Arizona or at least be snowbirds in Arizona. It's nice here.
Yeah, I have spent some time in Arizona. My grandma spent the last probably 10 years of her life living in Phoenix. And I gotta say, the Phoenix Music Museum, one of the coolest museums I've ever been to.
I came here for my birthday weekend. I spent it in Sedona. It was super magical. I got to interview Chelsea Hodson, who we're going to actually play during this episode. You guys will get to listen to her speak. She's effortlessly cool. And yeah, how's your week going?
I had to think about it for just a flash of a second. I was like, what day is it? How am I? How are things going? They're going good. Been fastidiously working on my memoir as promised. Turns out memoir has some of the same issues with as fiction, in that, like, as I've been putting together chapters 2 and 3 for my sample chapters, I'm wondering if those are in the right place in the book. It's like I'm not telling a story in a linear fashion. And so I can kind of choose what goes where. And that is proving out to be a challenge. My memoir, as I'm imagining it, will have an introduction and then 5 parts. And about like 3 chapters in each part that ladder up to the core concept of that section. And trying to figure out like what goes first and what lands where when you haven't written the whole thing is challenging. So I'm trying to release myself from the pressure of knowing that and be like, listen, you just need 3 banging chapters, and then you and your future agent and your future editor can all figure out what order they go in. You don't need to worry about that right now. Just make it the 3 best chapters possible. So I'm trying to get that out. For me, I have 4 days to get this proposal to Krisserin on time, and that is very important to me. So I'm trying to wrap that up. Chapter 1 is sick. I'm very happy with it. But chapter 3 are like this. There's like 9 chapters that are like morphing into those 2. So I am on track, sort of. Crunch time. Mean that I skip writing an essay this weekend on the newsletter, but we shall see.
You just bring back a previously published banger as like a reprint for the weekend.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I know I went through a similar struggle with my Gustafson novel because there's all these flashbacks. It's like, okay, well, do I want this flashback at the beginning? Do I want it, like, where should I put these things? But yeah, I was going to say, you just need your 3 best, most impressive chapters
Yeah.
or your proposal. So, but I know it's easy to get hung up on wanting to have it straight in your head, because for me, that helps me write. If I have it kind of like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I don't wanna give
But
away the wrong details in the wrong piece, you know? But like you said, like, I gotta get it done so I can start sending it out and making this beautiful list of agents.
so exciting. Well, if you had a good, productive week, though.
I think so. Yeah. I'm, like, thinking back in my head, I think so. I also spent some time on this weekend just hanging out. Rest. I could feel myself on that precipice where I was, like, a little just dizzy with life, and I was like, "You gotta step back, babe. Just take a second. Don't do anything productive today." It's funny, that day that I'm describing of not doing anything productive, there was actually a race in my town. It's our annual hill climb where you walk from town to the top of the pass. I think it's like maybe 1,500 feet elevation gain in like a mile and a half or something like that. And you can do it on foot, on bike and horseback. And so I was like, well, I'll do it on foot with the baby on my back. And I had 2 friends who were gonna do it with me, one who's recovering from an injury and one who is 6 months pregnant, and they both bailed. And so they were gonna keep me in line, and instead I was like, "Well, I'm just gonna go as fast as I can now that I'm doing it alone." So I went hard. I was like, "This is my recovery day." Once a Capricorn, always a Capricorn.
You know what? I have my best friend from college who I pole vaulted with at UCLA is also a Capricorn, and you are just like her. She is so exactly down to the like, oh, you don't think I can do, you're telling me I can't do this? Watch me. Oh, it's supposed to be easy. I'm going to go balls to the wall. Like, she and you are so similar. So you say things and I'm like, yeah.
I know that I'm going too hard when I hear Woods in my backpack start imitating my breathing. He's just in the backpack going, like, oh. But that was my relaxing day on Sunday, was helping to host and then do that race, and then hanging out at a playground for half the day. Dreamy.
Imagine your town like up in the mountains, Stars Hollow. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm picturing, like with the town hall meetings with Taylor Dessy and like
Yes. I mean, the
all
town
the
hall
fun little
meetings
festivals.
are exactly like that. The first time I saw
Really?
Gilmore Girls, because I only started watching Gilmore Girls like 2 years ago. And watching those town hall meetings, I was like, this is exactly what it's like. There's just one person who like stands up and says something that you're like, shut the fuck up. Um, but very charming. Love everybody.
So you're going to write the modern day Gilmore Girls, but set in a small town in Colorado. I feel like that would do really well. You should do
Yeah,
that.
I actually do really wanna. I do have a like very rough draft of essentially like a modern Northern exposure. Yeah. So, when I'm done with the memoir and the novel and
Mhm.
everything else I'm working on, I'm gonna pitch a TV show.
I'm obsessed. We talked a little, and I'll tell you about how my writing week went in a minute, but we talked a little bit about this before, like writing with place in mind. And I just started reading Leslie Bannatyne's Lake Song, which, oh my God, we talked about confidence last week. And it makes me feel so bad about myself because she's such a beautiful writer. I'm like reading these sentences and I was like, I should just throw in the towel because I will never be able to write as beautifully as this, but it's set around a specific, I think, made up name of a lake in the Lake District in New York, Finger Lakes. Anyhow, we'll be talking to Leslie Banton about place, but my week last week, I think I told you I finished editing my first draft of or not my first draft. I finished revising my draft of my book. And then when I got here to Scottsdale, I spent all day yesterday reading aloud the first 6 chapters of the second book and revising them. And because I'm in this Airbnb by myself, I didn't feel weird or awkward just reading it out loud.
Yeah.
And so I finished that, and then I sent it yesterday to my agent. I was like, here you go. Here's the as promised revised draft of the first book and the first 67 pages of the second book. And she wrote me back this morning. She's like, great, we'll still meet on December 1st. She's like, I don't have time to do this right now. No, she didn't say that, but she basically was like, we're still going to, because I was like, what are our next steps? And she was like, we are still going to follow the original schedule that I mapped out. It's like, okay.
Oh my gosh, I love her
like,
boundaries.
She's so good with boundaries. She's really good with, and I'm really good at respecting them. So I'm like,
You're like, yes, aye,
aye, Captain. So I have 190 pages of that second book written, and I guess I'll just keep going. But my
Yeah.
week went well. I got to go spend the weekend in Sedona with my friends from college, and then I've been here getting speeding tickets in Scottsdale. So it's been great.
That's spectacular. I love to hear it. An alternate reality confidence note. I have been clearing one of the bookshelves I have in my office because they were still full of the previous owner's books. He passed away this Christmas, so I feel like now I can go through them and relinquish them and rehome them as needed. And there are some classics. There's like 6 books out of 40 that I decided to keep, but there were also a lot of books where I was like, look at all the shit that gets published. There is no reason we shouldn't be able to get published. There is a bunch of dreck out there, and I want to be part of it.
I want to add to the dreck.
Yeah, totally. So now I also have like 2 huge open shelves. So I'm ready to pack them in with the people that we're reading this season. Krisserin, but I'm like dying to know, you interviewed Chelsea Hodson this week. Like, tell me everything. Tell me everything. Tell them everything.
Well, Chelsea, I know because she is also a fellow Penn Emerging Voices alumna. I think she was the year before me. And I remember just thinking she was already so cool. You know, she's beautiful and she's this beautiful, long, dark hair. And she's got this very moody vibe. But then when you talk to her, she's the nicest human being on the planet. So I knew I was going to Sedona, and she lives in Sedona full time. She moved there a couple of years ago from Brooklyn. And I think she originally is from Arizona or like went to school in Arizona. So she went back to the middle of the desert, and we had a really great conversation. She has published an essay collection called Tonight I'm Someone Else. And she has her own independent press called Rose Books, which I did actually, for listeners of the first season, I interviewed her briefly during AWP about independent publishing and why that is a good route for some people. But she runs that. She does a lot. This woman is busy. So she is the publisher of Rose Books, the founder of the Morning Writing Club, which started as a way to kind of like what we're doing, but she every morning from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. would log on to Zoom with a group of people, and they would just write for a really long time. And now I think they meet less frequently, but that group, which if you are looking for community, a great community, the Morning Writing Club, because they have classes and they have agents come and talk to the people in the group and other writers and workshops. So real sense of community over there. And then she recently debuted her first single. So she's also a musician.
I'm already salivating.
And it's a beautiful single. We're going to play it at the end of our interview with her. But yeah, she has a really interesting path to publication. And so I wanted to chat with her about how she created this incredible writing career and became a mentor to all these people. So we're going to start that interview now. I hope you guys enjoy it. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you. I can't believe we're in Sedona.
I know I get very little visitors out here. It's like just far enough out of the way that not a lot of people come here. So I was excited that you said you were going to come.
They're lost because it is, I mean, the camera can't see it and the listeners can't hear it, but look at that.
I know. It's so beautiful here. It's crazy.
magical here.
I know.
And I saw a falling star last night.
Yeah. Because it's a dark sky
Yeah.
community. So that means there's like all these laws. You can't have lights that are too bright, even on the streets.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm so envious that you get to live in such a beautiful place and call it home.
Yeah.
And how long have you been here?
Almost 4 years.
From Brooklyn.
Yeah. I grew up in Phoenix. I grew up 2.5
Oh.
hours from here, and I went to school in Tucson. So
Oh.
I'm like very Arizona based,
Okay.
but I've never lived up here until I moved here.
So you're a desert girly.
Yeah.
You're a
In
desert
my
rat.
heart. Yeah, for
so
sure.
am I grew up in the desert.
Which
Not sure you knew
desert?
that. In the Mojave Desert in
Oh,
California.
cool. Awesome. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you feel at home here too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot how dry it is, though.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
a little bit of reasoning happening while I'm here, but I'm really enjoying it. And I'm so happy that we could find time to sit down and chat.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me.
You're the first interview of the podcast.
There
So,
we go. Here I am.
yeah.
I'm honored.
I've known you for a while now, and I've known you as, Chelsea Hodson, the published essayist, and publisher of Rose Books. But I don't know your story of how you started writing and
Yeah.
when you started taking writing seriously. So I'd love to hear your origin story as a writer.
Yeah, thanks. It's so cool that we're both from the Penn USA Emerging Voices program, because that was a really kind of important step for me. I think like early on I think it was like high school. I wasn't one of those kids who was always writing and reading even. I was really into music and like really into the punk scene and going to shows and stuff. But I was into newspaper and journalism. And I come from two parents who are very supportive, but very much like you should find a job that's steady, not like do whatever you want, like be creative. They always embrace, they were like interested in art and music and film and introduced me to a lot. But it was very much like, you should probably find a major and go to college that, makes sense realistically for your adult life. And so I thought, well, maybe if I wrote for a newspaper, that would be good. And even once I got to college in like the early 2000s, all my professors were like, look, you guys, like this is dead. Like, don't do it.
They had some foresight.
You know,
I feel
they're-
like newspapers were still alive in the early 2000s.
They were, but like the writing was on the wall. So even my professors at the time were kind of like, look, you guys. And I, I had to have a minor at the college I went to, and I minored in poetry to be like, well, maybe I can, do some creative writing on the side. It would never occur to me to major in English or major in creative writing. I just thought, that's crazy. Why would you do that? I didn't really understand the academic system even of maybe I could teach if I did that. But I didn't know that I wanted to teach. So I was very kind of happy in journalism, not really knowing what was going to happen next. But I liked the education of it. I liked people teaching me how to be concise. That was like a huge part of journalism. I feel like I've carried that. I became a good copy editor of myself. So I learned a lot of skills that I do still use, even though I didn't become a journalist. But what I really liked was things like This American Life and journalism that was kind of self-centered in a way, where it was like, here's my experience in this thing that I'm reporting on. And so I started reading and listening to a lot of things like that. Essayists. I started writing poetry, and I had a really great poetry teacher that kind of encouraged me. She had office hours, and in my mind, I was like, oh, well, I'll go and, work on my poetry with her. And I realized no one else was doing that. So I would show up to this cafe where she was having her office hours, and she would just work with me.
Oh my God.
And that was the first time that anyone encouraged my poetry or in creative writing. And I think she was just a couple of years older than me. And I just thought she was so cool. I was like, wow, poetry is awesome. And so that kind of set me on a path. And when I graduated, I moved to New York without a real plan. So I moved from Tucson to New York thinking, I guess that's where artists go. I think I got that idea from TV or something. I really like that show Felicity.
Yeah. Yes.
Like I sometimes looking
love
back, I'm like, I
Felicity,
think I ended up in New York because of Felicity. On a subconscious
Oh my
level, it like
gosh.
planted a seed. And I was like, well, that's where you go if you're like looking for adventure and longing and love.
You
And
didn't cut off all your hair, did you?
no, I didn't cut off
Okay.
my hair, but I also didn't start with hair like that. So,
Yeah.
but so I ended up in New York, and I was just working a bunch of part-time jobs. And then I pursued a mentorship with Sarah Manguso, actually.
Oh, wow.
Sarah ended up writing my letter of recommendation for the Penn Center Emerging Voices program. And so she was very supportive of me early on of trying to find my way. And she was the first person that said, I think you're leaning actually to writing essays. And I thought, oh, I've never done that. I was like reading a lot of it, but I thought, well, I'm working with poetry. I'll just do that. And as she described it, some of my poetry was leaning towards essays. Maybe you're more of an essayist. And so she was the first person that told me, like, maybe you're writing an essay collection. I thought, oh, maybe I am, And so in my teaching and coaching now with people, I try to give them ideas sometimes like that, where I'm like, maybe you could do this, because that was really instrumental to me. And I think it didn't seem like a big deal probably to Sarah at the time. But to me, it's like all I needed was someone to tell me, maybe you're trying to do this. Like, does that seem right? I'm like, yeah, maybe I am. Like, maybe I could do that. So I didn't grow up really with any sort of like connections or knowing many writers at all. And I think just step by step, I made my way into a community of writers, or like cities where other writers lived, because I went from New York to LA, back to New York. And I think just step by step, I got closer to my dream, which was having a book. So it really was like several years of trial and error, trying to figure out what my voice as an essayist and poet was, trying to put a book together. So I think like after several years, I thought, well, I think maybe an MFA would help me. So it was something I was always kind of against, because I have like a punk background. And I just thought, like, I don't need to go back to school or something. And so, but after a while, I thought, well, my mentorship with Sarah was so helpful. Maybe if I'm in a program, it will help me get to that last step. And I'd been working on the essays for several years, that by the time I went, it was like I was ready. So I did ultimately finish my essay collection at Bennington, which is where I ended up going.
That's incredible. First of all, I feel like office hours are such an underutilized thing. And like, God willing, my kids go to college. I'm going to go talk to your professors. Go visit them in their offices. Because I had similarly, I had formed really good relationships with some of my professors because I went and bugged them.
Yeah. And this was actually a grad student. So I had like a professor of poetry, that I was in a bigger class, and then you'd section off and do these smaller poetry workshops. Yeah. And it just never occurred to me until years later that like I might be bothering her or like imposing, but I don't think I was. Like, I think she was excited to work with someone that's excited. And being a teacher now, I know what that's like, where it's like, when someone is invigorated by the things that you're saying and discussing with them, it's really gratifying. So I think that she enjoyed it too, but it never occurred to me that I might be imposing by like sitting with her for 2 hours every Monday or whatever. Oh my gosh. And it really, really helped me.
And then how did you find the mentorship with Sarah Mendesot?
I honestly just loved her work, and I emailed her. So I was actually working as a personal assistant at the time for other people. And I offered to do personal assistant work for her in exchange for editing. And she said yes.
Wow. That's incredible.
And this was like 12 years ago. So this is like after, I think she had published The Two Kinds of Decay. But I think that was it. She had published The Guardians like after we worked together. So it was kind of early in her like being known as an essayist too, and a prose writer. But I loved her poetry. I was obsessed with it.
Yeah, it's so funny. I think that the idea of emailing or reaching out to one of your favorite writers is such a terrifying, I think, concept to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I did it recently. I emailed an author whose books my mother and I were reading together and we really liked. And I was like, my mom and I really like your books. And she wrote me back. And she was like, oh my God, thank you so much. I think actually writers want to hear from their readers, and we shouldn't be afraid to reach out to people.
I was afraid, and I had a friend at the time that I was telling this to. I was like, I just have this sense that I need more education, but I don't know if an MFA is right for me. But I could tell. It's that, I don't know if you've heard that Ira Glass quote of the disparity between your taste and your skill. Like, I could tell that what I was writing wasn't up to what I really wanted to be reading.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just need someone to kind of tell me what I'm doing wrong. So I was very open about the fact that I wasn't ready to publish a book, for instance, but I really wanted to get better. So I had that hunger.
Yeah.
And so I told my friend, who was a successful photographer and like wasn't afraid of this kind of stuff. And I said, I'm thinking about asking this writer that I just love, but I don't want to bother her. Like it's kind of a crazy ask. Yeah. And he said, the worst thing she can do is say no or not respond.
Or just not.
He goes, is that bad? And I was like, you're right. Like, it's not that bad. If she says no, I would actually totally understand it. But if she says yes. And so that was a really good lesson for me, because sometimes like you do have to ask. And this is something I encourage a lot of my students to do, where I'm like, if there's a writer you really want to work with, maybe this kind of setup wouldn't be for them of being their personal assistant or something, because it took a lot of trust on Sarah's part. But my advice to other people is often just to ask what their editorial rates are. Like if you have a draft of your book and you want your favorite writer to edit it, like ask them what it would be.
The worst thing that could happen is they say yes and then they're a horrible person. And then your hero just like,
yes, that's true. That's true.
That's happened to me where I met my hero and I was like, wow, I
Yeah.
hate you now.
And I often remind people that just because they're your favorite writer, it doesn't mean that they're going to be a good teacher or editor
No.
for you.
No,
So, but I
definitely
did
not.
really luck out where Sarah was like really instrumental for me.
Something that you just said really fascinates me because I've been thinking about it a lot myself where, you sometimes when you're doing an exercise, just to use an analogy, you could be doing things the wrong way. And
Yeah.
you could just completely repeat over and over the wrong technique or not see any improvement. So I've been feeling that a lot myself because I was talking about wanting to get an MFA and they're like, why? Like, if you're going to publish, why do you need an
Yeah.
MFA? And it's because I'm trying to understand, like, how do you become a better writer? Because I was thinking about it. I've been writing now for so long.
Yeah.
And I just picked up a book by another author that we're going to interview. And I was reading it and I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
I could never write like this. And
Yeah.
it's very humbling.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, how do I, besides reading a lot, how do
Mhm.
I become a better writer?
It's such a good question. And it's like, it might seem so obvious, but I think like if you're a good writer, you're always asking that.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm writing a novel now after writing essays and I feel like I'm new again. So it's like, I don't really totally feel like writing one book even helped me write the next one. So I'm like,
No.
always still learning. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think it's good that I change and evolve and that I don't write just another book of essays about the same topics. What's the point in that? I want to be always learning and being present and evolving. And I think like that means that you don't always know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's become really instinctual and intuitive where when I write something, even in fiction versus nonfiction, it's like I can feel that it's real. Or I can feel that it's authentically me in
Mhm.
some way, and that I wrote it in a way that possibly no one else could write it that way. Where it's like, maybe that's not totally true, but that's the feeling I get. And a lot of that for me comes from reading aloud. So it's like over time, being able to edit myself and being edited by other people, I can hear it out loud, like that's good. Or that's a good first sentence, or that's a good last sentence. So I think it's almost beyond teaching. It's like spending enough time with your work that you can identify things like that and they feel okay. Because I used to just think like, well, when will something ever be done? I don't know. And I could always make it better.
Yeah.
And now I have the sense of like, it's done. That is what I set out to do with this story or this chapter.
How do you read your work out loud? What does that look like? What does that sound like?
I have different modes where sometimes the constraint for myself in editing is reading a chapter all the way through and I'm not allowed to stop. And then oftentimes I'll read it to kind of do almost like an energy read where I'm like, okay, it's lost the energy here. And I don't really know why, but when I read it aloud, I'm tuning out. It doesn't sound good. Something needs to change there. And then I kind of know how to go in and make it better.
Do you feel like the MFA helps you become a better writer?
It's a good question. I think that ultimately, yes, because it provided a really intense framing in which to interrogate my work for better or for worse. So when people ask me if like they think that they should get an MFA, I really ask them where they're at in their writing because I think it can be harmful for a lot of people. If people go too early without really doing that work of being alone with your work, having some sense of what your writing habits are, workshopping in maybe a lower stakes environment, a one-off Zoom workshop or something. Like if you go in totally fresh, not having really thought about what kind of writing you want to do, I think it's really disorienting for some people. And I saw that in my program where people came straight out of their undergrad, straight into Bennington, thinking like that's what they should do if they want to be a writer. And that doesn't work for everyone. I had workshops where my writing was totally torn apart. I had an instructor to say, you know what, I think like with this piece, I would honestly just throw it away. I'll start again. I'm like, what kind of advice is that? It's totally disorienting. And I cried after that. I was thinking like, what am I doing?
After a workshop too.
No, this is like 3 terms in. I'm like, am I crazy? Like it starts to kind of like make you doubt it. If you are traditionally a good student, and you like feel like you're following your intuition, you're being creative, you're doing what you want to do. And then a teacher, who traditionally is the person who tells you if it's good or bad, tells you it's bad, it's upsetting if like maybe deep down you're a people pleaser, which I think I've had to work on. But that was a workshop I had where then I had 6 months to work with this teacher who like obviously hated my work. Like he didn't say hate, but like he almost could not engage with it.
Mm.
And in the act of kind of defending my work and maybe experimenting with meeting him in the middle and realizing that wasn't working either, it actually did help me. So it's like, in some ways that helped me just as much or more than the teacher or teachers that were like, oh yeah, I love it, keep going. That was encouraging and helpful. But having to be in a situation where I'm like, is he right? You know, like, is there a shred of truth to what he's saying? Because I am writing kind of obliquely. Like maybe there's parts where I could clarify it. I do see what he was saying, but ultimately, as a writer, I think you have to sometimes double down on the things that people are telling you they don't like, because often that is what's making your writing different from anyone else's. And sometimes you run into a teacher that you have to work with for 6 months where they just don't get it. And so I wasn't in the position of thinking, he's wrong, I'm right. But it did kind of put me in a crisis of confidence, being like, should I be doing more of what he's saying? Or like, what do I want to do? And so I think that put me in a space of thinking deeply in a way that maybe I wasn't before. So I think that experience was really helpful for me. He told me that you couldn't write an essay in a dream, which I thought was like really interesting, hard and fast rule. And I was like, watch me, you know, we just have this tension of like, I'm like, well, see what you get next month, you know. In some ways it did make me more confident because I was like, I'm going to do exactly what he says I can't do. So I think putting yourself in that situation at the right time in your writing is good. But if I had had that kind of interaction early on, you know, I'm like maybe 5 or 6 years into working on essays at this point when I went to get my MFA. That's a much different situation than year one.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you is if you've ever had rejection that really stopped you in your tracks with writing, because I feel like that happens where you just get soul crushed and you're like, I'm not a writer, man.
Yes. And talking about where you're at in your writing, this experience I was just talking about with my MFA was years in. Very early on, I'd say this is maybe year one of writing essays, a couple years into poetry. When you did Emerging Voices, you had guests all the time, right? So we had a guest come in that was an editor, and he had asked to read like at least a couple pages of everyone's work before coming, but I didn't realize he was going to like live critique it. I don't know that anyone else really understood that that's what was happening. I would say that's ultimately a valuable experience if he's like being thoughtful about it.
Right.
So he went around the room and was giving people advice that, you know, like seemed fine. And he got to mine. And I had turned in something that had actually been published, an essay about 2 girls, you know, me and another girl at a beach camp. This is a version of this ended up in my book too. It was called Beach Camp. And it was just about events that transpired at camp and kind of the mystique around it and all these things. And he comes to me and he goes, girls always write about camp. He goes, what is that? And, you know, I'm in front of my peers in my cohort. I'm in front of, you know, Libby, who was running the program. And it was really embarrassing where I'm like, you know, it kind of put me in this position of this editor is above me. He must know more than me if he's an editor of this journal. And he's essentially confirming my worst fear, which is that the female experience is trivial and not interesting. Because it, you know, it is that kind of essay where it's like coming of age, adolescent girls, maybe having feelings for each other. It was like that. It's not the type of essay that's like, what is life? What is death? You know, it's like, you could argue that it's trivial. And so by him saying that, it kind of confirmed my worst fears, which is that to be an essayist, I should be more serious about the topics I'm writing about, and my life isn't serious enough. And again, similar to this teacher that I was describing, I think it just forced me to go to ask those questions of myself in a serious way of like, ultimately deciding I want to double down and prove him wrong. That's the kind of stuff I like to read. So even if that's his response, ultimately I'm still going to do my thing, you know? And so it's like, I could have trashed that essay, and instead I revised it, worked on it, and published it in the book years later because I had kind of worked through that fear. But that was like kind of crushing to me. And that's something that really stands out in my mind a moment where your worst fears you feel like are confirmed and you think, what am I going to do? Because that's a moment where I think some people really could quit.
Yeah.
Like that kind of just reductive feedback. Like he didn't talk about any of the writing or anything. It was just like the topic seemed stupid to him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that ultimately, once you get to the other side and you decide you're not quitting, it does make you stronger. I'm grateful for those experiences ultimately because it did toughen me up.
Yeah.
And now if I read a Goodreads review where someone says something like that, I'm like, oh, well, that's their experience. Like it doesn't faze me at all.
Oh, I hate that man.
Yeah, we can name him up.
I want to know.
It's not because it's like ultimately it's not me trying to go against him or anything.
No.
It was just one of those experiences where to him that didn't seem like a big deal, and to me that was already my worst fear.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess what it makes you do is take a step back and really examine the thing that you're doing.
Yes.
And ultimately the work becomes stronger because of it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people in this space either are trying to gatekeep publishing and trying to gatekeep the path towards becoming a writer by actually turning people away from it.
Yeah.
These types of critiques or whatever it may be, which is unfortunate. And they're human, right? They come to whatever they're doing with their own insecurities that they then project onto you or whatever it may be, you know?
Yeah.
If you're a man writing a story about two boys at camp,
it's like when you've had the same response.
Oh my God,
I don't know.
Like,
you know,
this is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, the homoeroticism of this is just chef's kiss.
Totally.
Which is so unfortunate. But why is it always the men?
I don't know. I don't know that it's always the men, but that has been my experience of, I don't know, you know, and my favorite writers were writers like Maggie Nelson, Sarah Manguso, and things like that, where I felt like they were exploring something that I hadn't seen explored before. So ultimately, when I would receive critiques where it was like, what are you doing? I don't really get it. I would just kind of go back to rereading, which is like a big thing that I do, rereading my favorite books and being like, well, they wouldn't think of it that way.
Yeah.
You know, like even if I'm not getting Maggie Nelson's take on it, I know that she wouldn't agree with what he said. And ultimately, I like her writing. So, you know, you can see how I would just kind of like build the confidence back up. So I think that that's an important skill to have and to be in the practice as a writer of hearing critiques that aren't, you know, I love it or more, you know, it's like, I don't get this. It doesn't resonate with me. Therefore it's bad. It's like, you do have to kind of weather yourself to that kind of feedback.
Yeah.
Because I've had friends that like maybe don't get that feedback, then publish a book and their Goodreads page drives them insane.
Yeah. Yeah, you
So
don't
it's
want
like,
that.
I always like tell writers like when they have a bad workshop experience and like it's ultimately helping you so that you can be okay in the publication process.
Yeah. And my advice is always remembering that the people who are reading your work might not be your readers, but they could offer you something that you didn't think about.
Yes,
you know, that
totally.
will make the work stronger. A good teacher, though, should be able to say, like, I might not be the reader for this, but I can see the merit in this, that, and the other thing, and maybe here you could make this better by doing this.
Yeah, or like my experience is I got totally lost here.
Yeah.
You know, rather than being like scrap it and start again. So again, it's like I think I'm the type of personality maybe where I with time, you know, maybe not right away, but with time I'm able to take whatever might be a negative experience and just be like, okay, actually that makes me a better teacher because I know what it's like to receive feedback that is not helpful. So how would that have been helpful for me? Okay, now I'll approach that when I read a student's work that's not resonating with me. I'm not like, you should probably just start over.
Yeah, I try and couch my feedback and this is how I received this. Was that your intention?
Right.
Did you want me to feel this way when I read this part of your work?
Yeah, totally.
So how did you find your agent? Tell us that story.
It's kind of a wild story. I'll tell the short version of it. But ultimately, when I was trying to write essays and work on my poetry and I was in New York, I was trying to come up with a writing habit, a writing ritual, because I'm such a perfectionist that there would be many days in a row where I'd be like, well, I don't feel like it's the perfect time to write. So I won't write. And I could feel that that was not right. And I thought, well, what if I made myself write every day and had some sort of constraint? So I had a Tumblr at the time. This was 2012, I think I started it, 2013. Yeah. Whenever I tell this to my like Zoomer students now, I'm like, you guys might not know, but there's a site called Tumblr. But I had a Tumblr and I started a project called Inventory, which cataloged every single object I owned. And I would take a photo of myself with the object, and then I would write one paragraph, maybe related to the object, maybe not at all. So it was just like, sometimes it would be directly about this thing I owned, and sometimes it would just be this kind of abstract relationship with it. But it was just like 4 sentences. And I made myself do it every day and publish it every day. So it was almost like exposure therapy for myself, because I realized I was so terrified of publishing that I maybe needed to do a little every day. Like, not wait for these gatekeepers, these editors to say yes, because it took about 2 years of rejection to get my first essay published. Like, I had a really hard time finding the right kind of journal that was into the type of essay I was doing, which was somewhat experimental, somewhat oblique. I think like it's become more common now, but at the time there were certain journals that just weren't open to any sort of lyricism in essays. And so I had a hard time like finding the right journals, which was its own process. But with my Tumblr, I could just do it every day. So I started with seriously 10 followers by doing this every single day, which is something these like TikTok influencers and other people talk about now, where it's like post every day. This was my first kind of foray into that. And Tumblr featured me at one point. I ended up with like 20,000 followers, following this girl taking a selfie of herself with an object and a paragraph each day. And that was it was like a year into the project. So I went most of it, without much readership. Then it started really kind of picking up traction. For Tumblr, that was like a big deal. And I did the project for 2 years, and maybe about a year into that, like shortly after being featured, a writer named Jacob Silverman showed the blog to his agent at the time. And she reached out to me and asked if I was writing a book. So it's kind of like the dream, right? You're like, oh, I got a email from a New York agent. I knew that my book wasn't ready, but I was working on the essays. So we met, and she had read what I had written and said, it seems maybe a little young to me, but I think you have a lot of potential. Let's kind of keep in touch,
How old were you at the time?
So what old was I? I think I was like 26, 27. Okay. And so that made me really trust her, because I thought, if she comes like with a contract or something, I was like so new to this. I was like, I'm not really going to trust her if she thinks this is good. I know that it's not good yet. And like I said, I was actively pursuing making the writing good, but I liked that she was kind of in the same mindset that I was, where it's not all the way good and it's not ready to sell, but maybe it could be someday. Let's keep in touch. So shortly after that, I went to Bennington to get my MFA, and we were in touch the whole time. She would come to my readings in New York. We were in touch. She would read stuff. She signed me. And when the week before my book was done to turn into her, she quit publishing. She had some sort of life event. She was a new agent. She just decided like, this isn't for me. Ultimately, I'm so glad that happened, because you don't want someone who's like on their way out of publishing selling your book.
For sure.
So, but I was devastated. We were friends at that point. We had a great working relationship. I thought we're going to be paired up together forever. She's my cheerleader. And it just didn't work. And she said, this agent at the same agency is talking to a lot of my clients to take them on.
Good. Yeah.
That is Monica Woods, who is now my agent and started Triangle House Literary. So she was a younger agent at the time, and I think had a dream of having her own agency, but that happened, I think, after we sold my book. So I just immediately went with her, being like, I guess this is what I'm doing. Yeah. Not totally familiar with if we'd be a good fit or not, just kind of trusting that was probably the best option for me, rather than to start querying or look elsewhere. She wanted to work with me. So I thought, let's do it. Let's try it out. And so she sold my book, I think 6 months after that. But it was so wild having this years-long relationship with one agent, feeling like that's your agent. You've got it, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And having that upended the week that I was really like, okay, I'm sending you the manuscript. She was like, I can't do it. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. It was so scary.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because you think like, it's over for me. Like, that's it.
Start from scratch and start all over again.
But really it could have been over for me if she tried to sell the book and failed because she wasn't interested in being an agent or something. Your agent holds a lot of power if you're publishing at a certain, at a certain tier with certain publishers, like the agent is really crucial.
You had this book of essays, you have this manuscript. Did you work on them with Monica and then work on them again? What was that process like?
I had completed most of the manuscript at Bennington. So I had drafts of most of the essays, but I worked on them and had, I think, like 70% of the essays. That's the version of the book that sold, understanding that the editor would then work with me to complete the book.
Okay.
So Monica did read them, but I wouldn't say we worked on them.
Okay.
She did like the final read, gave me really helpful feedback. And then my editor at Henry Holt was a poet. So she was like a published poet herself, Libby Burton, and really got what I was doing. And I felt like I was in really good hands with her. And she helped prompt me for some of the final essays.
Amazing.
She would do things like say, well, I see that you wrote about money in this essay. Like, what if you wrote totally about money here, And so I'd be like, okay, got it. And I just hit the ground running.
Nice. So. Wow, to have a partner in that way must be incredible.
From what I'm hearing, that's rarer and rarer.
Yeah. What does because your life is very full now with a lot of stuff. What does your writing ritual and routine look like now? You said you're working on a novel.
Yes, I'm working on a novel. My morning writing club used to meet for 2 hours every weekday morning, Monday through Friday. So we would take the weekends off, but we used to meet 5 to 7 a.m. Pacific time.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people were Eastern time working 8 to 10, which worked better for them. But my writing routine used to really be 5 to 7 every weekday. And that really, really worked for me in a way where, again, I was using the Zoom accountability group to help make sure I showed up every day. Because I realized that sometimes I wouldn't show up for my own writing the way I would show up for other people. So if I'm teaching or coaching someone, I will never cancel. I'll suck it up, whatever is going on, I will be there and not let that person down. But I found I was letting myself down because I was kind of afraid of not being able to write this book or writing in a new genre. So I started the morning writing club to actually help myself, and it started helping other people. And so that became a really great community. Then I got pregnant and I had third trimester, like crazy insomnia. And so I would be waking up at 2 a.m., be ready to fall asleep at 5 a.m., hosting morning writing club. It was like really a slog.
Yeah.
And I kept it going. I had an assistant that helped me when I gave birth and when I wasn't able to do that in the first couple months, like she would help me now and then. I was still kind of showing up for it. Even if I wasn't writing, I would help kind of host it. But I think about 3 years into morning writing club, so 3 years of doing that every weekday, maybe I would say a total of maybe 4 months off. I did it every single day. So my assistant helped, but like I was there for the most of it. Just having a new baby, I was like, you know what? It has to change. And I was looking at the numbers and the membership was increasing, but I do all these other events like classes and author talks and stuff. And I realized that most people were joining for that, not really the morning group. So it was actually coming down to the membership was so large that about 5% was showing up to the morning sessions that I no longer was using. And so I took a big risk and said, we're actually going to do them the first week of each month. That's it. We're doing a ton of other events. So now I teach a generative workshop. I do all this other stuff to make it useful for everyone, but it's no longer every single weekday because my writing is so different, my writing time. So as you know, having kids just kind of, there's all these phases that they go through and their sleep changes so much. So my daughter is almost 2 now, and I feel like we're getting a rhythm. But sometimes, this is most of the time now, I will actually write before she gets up. I will sometimes go to bed by 8 p.m. And wake up at 2:30 or 3:30 to write before she wakes up because she's an early riser. Because I so miss that early morning time.
That's mad.
So my husband is super, super helpful of helping me with her during the day. But just because I do so much other writing coaching and teaching and other things I have to do, I really miss that time where no one's up. And I don't have any obligations and I'm fresh out of a dream. So I've been kind of fighting for that almost middle of the nighttime.
Wow.
So it might, I don't talk about it that much because I feel like it kind of makes me sound crazy.
No.
I mean, I think I've told people who aren't moms and they think it's crazy.
Like,
and anytime I tell it to a mom, they're like, I totally get that. I did that. And they're like, I get it. So it's like I am getting enough sleep, but sometimes it's like I just go to bed at 7 when she goes down, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I find that I have to fight for it in a new way, but that has been what has worked best for me because writing at night is almost impossible.
Oh yeah.
It's like my brain is just dead.
Fried.
So I do have other morning time, but like I said, it's like I work so much with other stuff that sometimes I feel like, oh, I can't write today. So I have to fight to say, right now, you woke up at 3:30 for a reason.
Yeah.
Do it.
Do the work. Do you have a ritual around your writing time? Do you do anything special?
Not really. I try to not be too precious about it. I think I did early on, and that would result in me not writing. So I think I went to an artist residency at McDowell once. So I did one formal residency. Other times before I got pregnant and had a baby, I would do like hotel residencies, or I would just go to a hotel for 2 days and not really leave and just kind of be in the book. And that's been helpful for me too. But having been at one of those residencies, that's a cabin in the woods alone, someone cooks for you, I'm like, that is certainly the ideal.
Yeah.
It did work for me. It didn't make me feel crazy. It was so fruitful for me.
Yeah.
So I think someday I'll do that again or want to do it again. But I think now my husband and I moving here, it was a part of feeling like we didn't always have to get away from New York. And we live in a forest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a part of it where I don't have to be too precious about my surroundings because I'm in nature. And if I'm just sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop and my coffee, that's all I do. So I do down cold brew, like cold brew concentrate where I'm just like at 3:30 in the morning and I'm just buzzing.
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
I love that. What would you say, because you have this great community that you created with Morning Writing Club.
Yeah.
What's the thing you feel like you are helping them with the most? What are they struggling through the most?
I think that something I find is really common with writers who have not published a book or are not in a community of people who have published books is they think that once you publish a book, everything is fine.
Yeah. Go sell everything.
And that you know what to do.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. Your whole life changes. And so I think sometimes.
Wait, are you telling me that's not
So I think like in a best case scenario, your life does change. Hopefully your life changes for the better. You're known as a writer. You have a published book. You've accomplished your goal. I think philosophically, it's really important to remember that doesn't solve whatever's going on inside.
Of course not.
Sort of like any sort of like perfectionism, self-worth, self-perception. It's almost magnified by trying to promote the book and be proud of the book. So I think that something I try to remind people and try to kind of be in service to them for is reminding them that for me, it's a lifelong pursuit. It's not like I publish a book and everything's fine and I turn off. That book taught me how to write it. This book I'm writing now teaches me how to write it because I'm engaged with it in a meaningful way. So I try to just remind people that having that sense of being able to connect with your work in a meaningful way, that might be the most important part of writing rather than publishing.
Yeah.
And so I'm a pretty good model of that because sometimes people get really paranoid about working on a book for several years and thinking, well, I haven't published a short story in the New Yorker or, I don't publish that much. Should I be doing more? And I'm like, I haven't published in 2 years. And I'm like, you can choose to opt out. It's not gratifying for me in a certain way. I like putting my work into the world, but I kind of just see that as part of the ecosystem of being a writer. I don't write to publish necessarily. So I think that is comforting to a certain type of writer where they feel like they always have to be in the public sphere and promoting themselves. And I think it's all about cycles where it's like, hopefully when this book I'm writing now gets published, I will be in self-promotion mode. I will try to go on tour. I will try to be external in a way that I'm not naturally out there.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I feel like I'm in hibernation. I live very intentionally in the middle of, a tourist town where I don't see many people. I write in the middle of the night. It's like I like kind of being in a cocoon with my work until it's ready. So I like to remind people that a lot of what being a writer is just being able to show up for your work. It's okay to be afraid at times. It's okay to feel blocked. But there seems to be a lot of power, even over Zoom, in the idea that, like, in talking with each other and meeting over Zoom, that we're all in it together. There's this kind of energy that's generated from that. So
how do you get out of your hibernation phase into self-promotion phase? Because I feel like the self-promotion part of being a writer feels very scary
to me.
Yeah.
And I think probably for a lot of people, because writers are, I think by nature, a little bit more solitary little hermits that sit in their cave and create their stories.
Yeah.
How do you? Because I feel like you do really well at it.
Thanks.
I feel like you put yourself out there regularly, and I'm always seeing posts about morning writing club.
Yeah.
And I think your Tumblr is a really great example of that.
Yeah.
Just showing up and doing it, and
Right.
it does open doors when you do self-promote.
When you put yourself out there.
Put yourself out there, no one's gonna know you exist.
Yeah.
right?
So I think a lot of it is the experiences I've had that are a direct correlation of putting myself out there. I think ultimately I'm proud of the things that I accomplish when they're ready. So I also, when I worked as a personal assistant, I worked for a literary publicist named Lawrence Rand. Do you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
Okay. She works at, she used to work out in New York when I lived there, and we're still friends to this day. And she taught me so much of how to promote a book effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a way where she's like, okay, you have to be on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Like, she's like, do what feels meaningful to you, you know, do, put essays out that feel authentic to you. And so she has a really unique kind of perspective on being in the world as a writer. I learned a lot from her, and seeing what other authors did. Before I had a book out, I could see when an author was resistant to putting themselves out there, saying no to readings or whatever. It hurt them in a certain way. So I tried to be like, okay, even if there's a part of me that maybe feels not ready to do that or something, I'm going to put myself in a new position to just see what happens. And I think around the publication of a book, it's like and for me in particular, I thought, well, you only debut once.
Yeah.
I guess I will be a debut novelist, at one point, but that'll be my second book, hopefully. But I just thought, I think I got to just push it. I think I got to work really hard. And so I used a lot of my advance to tour the book, actually. Publishers generally don't give you any sort of money towards it. Yeah. I booked my own events, and that seemed to work pretty well. So I'm just kind of putting myself out there, traveling. And I did one reading in Philadelphia. It was at a museum. It was like such a cool place to do a reading. There was some sort of drama with the other local readers, and they all dropped out. It had nothing to do with me. It had to do with one of the readers that they didn't want to read with. Okay. And then it's like, I didn't know anything that was going on. I'm like not in the scene.
Philly drama.
Yeah, it was like totally Philly drama. And the person who had invited me and curated this was like, the reading's not happening. And I was like, I'm showing up. And I was like, don't cancel it. I'm on my way. I spent money on a hotel. I spent money on a train. And it's like, this is something I would have dreaded before, but I was so kind of locked into the idea that, okay, well, the event's already in place. You already invited everyone. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so I just showed up, and all these people had shown up, and I said, you know what, for whatever reason, no one else is here. You are stuck with me. And we joked about it, and I did a longer reading, and, that kind of stuff, it toughens you up. It makes you more confident to just be like, okay, I don't feel great about being the only person on this reading. I don't know if I'm good enough or if I'm what they want to hear from, but I will do it because I've spent this money. And so I think in a way it does become kind of fun to adopt another persona in a way. I think my default is to just be alone, to be quiet, to not even speak. But that's not really healthy to do like for your whole life. Like, for instance, I really like being here with you and talking with you.
Thank you.
But
Thanks for coming.
It is something where I'm like, okay, I'll choose to like kind of practice that part of my personality at this time, so it's like, it's a choice for a writer, I think. And it's not always natural.
Well, I don't want to end the interview without talking about your music. So
sure.
You just released a single.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
It's like hauntingly beautiful.
Thank you. That's really nice. Thanks.
Tell me, because you said you had an interest in music originally.
Yeah.
Punk background.
Yeah.
First of all, when did you find the time?
Yeah.
Secondly, what brought you back to music?
Yeah. Music is something I've always, I think, wanted to do. Again, I think a lot of what I do comes down to confidence in a way, where I think there was a part of me that didn't feel like a performer. Feel like being a musician requires you to be on stage and out there in a way that maybe I didn't feel comfortable doing. And through writing and doing readings and feeling fine doing that, maybe it gave me another sense of confidence in that way. But really what happened was, so I've always played guitar, played piano for a long time. And my oldest friend from childhood, his name's Adam, he works as an engineer at a studio in Portland, Oregon. And when I got pregnant, there was a part of me that thought, if I don't do this now, I might never do it. Because I'd been thinking like, okay, I think I'm almost ready. Maybe I'll do it. You know, just kind of be like, maybe I'll do that someday. And then I got pregnant, and my husband supported me of being like, you should record. Like, you should do this. Because I'd been like, well, maybe in the next year I'll do it. And then it, you know, you kind of have your due date, the ultimate deadline. And so I talked with my friend. I said, what do you think about me coming out there and trying to record? He goes, yeah, totally. So everything was kind of in place. And I did 4 recording sessions, 3 in Portland, 1 in Sedona. Once I was so pregnant I couldn't travel. My friend came out here. And we recorded all of these songs. And then I had my baby, and we were actively kind of mixing. So there's a lot that happens in music after you record. So I think maybe the perception is that like I just did this. That's what I thought. I was like, wow, she just did this. The process has been a lot longer, similar to books, where it's like, you know, yeah, the book comes out, but you wrote it, you know, 3 years prior or whatever. Like it can take forever to come out. I had a similar kind of slow approach to this where I really wanted to be sure that it was good and ready. I didn't want to just put a song out in just a way that didn't have an intention or meaning behind it. Like, hey, look what I did. I wanted to do an album. So I am releasing a couple singles, and then I'll do a full album next year, which is like all done. So it's been like 3 years in the making.
So you're going to go on tour?
I don't know. So that's kind of like to be determined of what kind of musician I will be. But my husband is like an active musician. And so I'm, the first author I published on Rose Books is a touring musician. So I've always kind of been in that world, and it feels really good to kind of have my own voice in it. So for me, it's been similar to switching genres, where I think there's something in me that I do want to challenge that idea that I should be comfortable in what I'm doing. I do kind of like the discomfort in a way because it provides friction, where it's like being in a recording studio. I got there and I was like, who do I think I am? Why did I do this? This is horrible. And it's like you hear your voice in the mic.
Oh, I know.
Oh, God. And my friend's just going, don't worry. We got it. Like everyone hates their voice the first time they hear it. Don't worry. So he was kind of coaching me through it. But I think there's a lot of I don't know, there's a feeling you get when you kind of overcome that fear and you work through something really challenging that is gratifying in a way that it's not if I'm like, oh, I've always recorded music. Like, I'm just going to go do it again. It was a really kind of big event in my life to have faced that fear and have done it. So especially being sick in my pregnancy, I have done a recording session, not pregnant. I thought, oh my God, it's a whole new world. And I was like, oh, this is great. My voice sounds way better.
Yeah, than everything that I've been.
So it's actually kind of crazy that like I did what I did, but I did have the sense of like, I got to do it now.
Yeah.
So I just followed that, and I was still writing through it. But with music, you can kind of go to the studio, plug in, and then go on your way and then do it again in a couple months. So I would like to tour. I guess ideally, I don't know how it would work in my life, or I think it's very expensive to do, but we'll see.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming to us.
Thank you so much.
Great. And I feel like I learned a lot to share with everybody, and you built such an incredible community.
That's so nice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and everyone should go listen to your single.
Yeah, thanks. So it's under my name.
On Spotify, wherever you get your music. It is absolutely beautiful, and we're going to play it as an outro.
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
So, all right.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming.
Has one philosophy.
Krisserin, she's so cool. I'm so mad I wasn't there.
You guys would get along really well. She's a fellow Libra. She just had her birthday. Her birthday is 3 days before mine. So yeah, it was a really great conversation despite there was a family behind us, and then they had a drone and there were planes, and I was like, oh my God, this is a little distracting, but we had a great talk, and she's so inspiring. And, we talked last week about confidence. I love I was editing the episode and listening to you compliment me about how I'm always fishing. This woman, she is really constantly working. I can't believe she gets up at 2:30 in the morning to write. It's just incredible. Yeah. And she has a 2-year-old. So her daughter is a little bit older than Woods, but she just makes the time. She's working on a novel. She's releasing an album. She's got a writing group. It just goes to show that when it's something that's important to you, you find the time for it. You have to make the time for it, no matter how full life is with other things.
Deep respect. Speaking of making the time for things, what are you going to make time for this week, Krisserin?
Well, I'm in Scottsdale until the end of the week, and I'm probably going to be very busy with work things because that's why I'm here. I'm here for a work retreat. And I think when I get back home, the kids have school off on Monday. I think it's Indigenous Peoples Day.
Mm-hmm.
And so 3-day weekend for them. I'm just going to enjoy spending time with them and hopefully by the time we talk our next recording, I'm hoping to get further along on the second book. I think it's a little ambitious to try and finish reading through the remaining 130 or so pages. I probably could. I don't have as much fire under me as I did to revise the first book. But it's interesting because I'm going to go from revision mode into writing mode because we're going to start writing the end of the second book. So I think between now and the next time we speak, I want to have, gotten through at least half of the pages that I have left of the second book and revise them and read them out loud and listen to them. It's hugely helpful. I'm feeling like such a hypocrite because I always tell people to do it and then I didn't do it. Now that I'm doing it, I'm like, I was right the whole time. I should have just listened to myself.
I love that.
How about you?
It's time to lock in on those memoir chapters and get it to you on the 12th. And then querying. I had a conversation this week with Emily Halnan, who is the author of the book To the Gorge, a book about resilience, running, and grief. And she was in my area, and we went for a hike with our crazy dogs. And I was talking to her about her process.
Kind of mad that you didn't record your conversation with her.
I know. It just didn't even occur to me. It didn't even occur. Emily was telling me that one thing that she wished that she had done back before she published was really think through her marketing plan and all of her marketing options. And she was like, to have it from the beginning, like all the people who might have you on their podcast, all the people who might include you in their newsletter, like it's just such a great way to just make your package more appealing. And I have some elements in that. I have on my larger proposal, I have 4 authors who are various bestsellers, who I'm like, this person would vouch for me. Before I send out the proposal, I am going to email each of those people to be like, do you mind if I say this? But I hadn't thought about all the aspects that Emily was like, you should include this, you should include this, you should include this. And so thinking about that broader marketing plan as I come into this weekend to give you that proposal, like once I get my chapters to you, before I start looking at who the agents are, I am going to just bolster that marketing section so that when you come back to me with like, I think you're missing this, I think this could be stronger, that at least that part is a little more locked in. And then going into next weekend, I'm going to be camping, going to do some late season camping, a little cold desert camping. And then I'll have time to like think through everything as a whole away from the noise of laptops. So that's what's ahead for me. I hope it happens.
That's just more evident. I was listening to you talk about cold desert camping, and I said, ugh.
Listen, I don't like really
how different we are.
I don't really love cold desert camping, but I did promise that I would do something fun with the family, and this is Ben's version of fun. And I am going to ask the neighbors if we can borrow their van. So
okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean that just goes back to, first of all, we have to have her on the pod because it sounds like that would be a very useful conversation for a lot of people to think about their marketing plan and for their book. But I think that it just goes back to this idea of reaching out to people whose work you admire and trying to form connections with other authors and creating your writing community. I was thinking about what you said very early on in the podcast where you had mentioned that you go out and you follow the Substacks of writers that you admire and you comment on their work and you engage with them. And I think that that's hugely important because if you want these people to be your peers, you kind of have to engage with them as peers.
Yeah, it's interesting because like in the beginning, when you start doing this commenting and like reaching out to people, you are going to feel like a novice. You're going to feel out of your depth. And I think you just have to know that going in that is how you create those friendships. Like now, when we were thinking about this season, about how many people or who to have on, and I just had like a list of published authors. And I was like, these people they're not foreign to me. They're my friends. And that took time to build those friendships, but it's been really worth it for, their guidance and their clarity of vision and their support and just like knowing cool people who write amazing things, like having their art in my life has dramatically improved my life. I think there is something really special about like knowing the person who wrote the book adds this like really dynamic layer to it. And yeah, it's a delight. If you haven't already rated this podcast 5 stars, you got to do it for Krisserin's birthday. Like show up and put those 5 stars in there. She won't do it for herself. So I'm going to watch that number go up. And get in our inbox. Tell us who we should interview. Tell us about your projects and your books. Ask us questions. Obviously, we love to yap. Give us something to yap about. Official penpalspod@gmail.com. Penpalspod on the socials. And may I finish those sample chapters?
You will. They're going to be fantastic. I can't wait.
And may Krisserin finish her second book in a whirling dervish.
There's a lot of things that I'm going to have to figure out for the second book, but I'm excited. I'm excited for it. And next week, actually, well, technically tomorrow, but the listeners don't need to know that. And next week, we're going to have Leslie Bannaton on the podcast. And I sent Kelton some of her work and it made her cry. So she's a good writer.
Yeah, Krisserin said, I think this story is really funny. And then I was
funny.
Immediately crying. Cried throughout the whole story. Didn't think it was funny at all. Loved it, but did not laugh. Cried. Just cried.
It's kind of funny.
It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny, but I'm more of a crier than a laugher, so.
Okay. Yeah. Well, she's an incredible writer and she published her first short story collection in her 70s. So if that doesn't inspire you to just keep going, I don't know what will. But everyone, I hope you have an incredible week of writing. And Kelton, I'm so looking forward to your chapters.
Me too.
All right, everybody. Happy
writing.